What's up, YouTube? It's me, Palpatine, also known as Cam. This is going to be my end of 8.3 Elemental Shaman guide. I know with Shadowlands fastly approaching, obviously a lot of this information is going to be null and void soon. So I just wanted to get my channel kind of up and running and give you guys my thoughts and wish list for Shadowlands. And yeah, let's get into it. So there are two elemental builds you could play. There's one that involves stacking a Azerite Trait known as Igneous Potential. Talent build kind of differentiates a little bit. I'm not going to touch too much base on that one. That build is still really strong, and there's lots of other guides on it. I personally have just been playing a different build and different talents, so I would rather just keep the information concise and in one video. So with that out of the way, let's get into the talents. For the 15 row, we have Earth and Rage, Echo of the Elements, and Elemental Blast. Earth and Rage is pretty good passive damage. You don't really have to worry about it. It just happens. And it doesn't like differentiate too much from Elemental Blast. I think both of these talents are good. Just kind of depends on the situation. I do love the Elemental Blast spell. And notably, what's cool about it is if it can be affected by Elemental Overload. So if it does, you have a chance to get 2 of the buffs rather than just 1. So that's kind of cool interaction, and I think this will be cool. Especially with Echo and Elemental Blast not being on the same like talent tier anymore, not conflicting. I think that's a great change. So we'll see how that goes. But as of right now, I'm just playing Earth and Rage, just passive, extra damage. Not really much else to say about it. On the 30 row, we have Aftershock, Call the Thunder, and Totem Mastery. I think Totem Mastery is going to be your go-to in pretty much every single target situation. In AoE, it's still good. But like in dungeons and stuff like that, it feels redundant to just keep placing your Totem Mastery from pole to pole and just, you know, like the amount of globals you spend on it, you could just save and instead take Aftershock. This is really good in like AoE situations where sometimes you'll drop an Earthquake and instantly get a refund and you just get a second Earthquake for free. Sometimes this thing procs 3 or 4 times in a row, you know, it's really nice. Extra damage, so for dungeons, I usually play this talent, and single target, I'll play Totem Mastery. Unless there's like a ton of movement or something, then, you know, Aftershock might be better in that case, but that's just kind of how I feel. And this talent, Call the Thunder, I mean, it's just not good, I don't think. I mean, it might be okay, but I don't see anyone ever play it, so. On the 45 tier, we have pretty much just utility options here. Nothing's going to really increase your damage that much. We have Spirit Wolf, Earth Shield, and Static Charge. All 3 of these, I think, are fine choices. It's all personal preference. It just depends on how you think one of these will help your way through the content that you're doing. So Static Charge is nice. You know, if you hit at least 4 targets with it, you get the maximum reduction of 20 seconds. So instead of it being a 1-minute cooldown, it's now a 40-second cooldown. It's nice to have a couple extra stuns. That's, you know, kind of the gist of that. Earth Shield is nice. A little bit extra healing on yourself, you know. It'll help out your healer. It also increases your healing done to the target of Earth Shield. So if you place it on yourself and then you cast a Healing Surge, you know, you get an extra benefit from that. And then we have Spirit Wolf. This is my go-to de facto option. I just think it's usually the most useful, as it gives you movement speed inside of Ghost Wolf and damage reduction. So say, for example, you don't have Astral Shift up or something, but you just, you know, this big AoE boss thing's going to do a bunch of damage. All you have to do is go Ghost Wolf a few seconds before, and boom, you already have some damage reduction. So I love this talent. And I think the other 2 options are still good, so don't get me wrong. It's not like you're making a bad choice by taking one of these 2. I personally just like Spirit Wolf. So on the 60 row, we have Master of the Elements, Storm Elemental, and Liquid Magma Totem. Liquid Magma Totem is a cool talent. It's just unfortunately not that great. So I almost never see it played. I think it's a cool spell. It's just not better than the other 2 options on this row. Master of the Elements is really good if you're playing the Echo of the Elements build with like extra, you know, Igneous Potential traits. It's good too if you don't want to play the Storm Elemental build. But for me, this is, you know, this is it. This is the bread and butter. This is why Elemental is such a cool spec in my opinion. Just the effects from this guy are awesome. He gives you such a huge buff. It replaces your Fire Elemental, so if you like Fire LE, then, you know, obviously you won't maybe enjoy this talent, but You should try it out. It's a lot of fun. Every time he's active, when you cast Chain Lightning or Lightning Bolt, it will reduce the cast time of your next Lightning Bolt by 3%, stacking up to 20 times. When this thing is fully stacked, your Lightning Bolts and Chain Lightnings are pretty much instant casts. So it's really fun to play, especially like inside of Lust, and you're just tunneling into a boss. It's really cool. So that's that row. On the 75 tier, we have Nature's Guardian, Ancestral Guidance, and Windrush Totem. Nature's Guardian is really good in like progression content where you need a big heal. You know, obviously it has an internal cooldown, but this is nice to just help your healers out. Anytime you're in danger, it'll just boom get you out of danger. So that's cool. Ancestral Guidance works almost like Vampiric Embrace. Whenever you use it, some of your damage and healing done is like redirected onto nearby injured party or raid members. It's not a ton of healing, but it's nice when you want to help your healers give a little extra cushion, especially when you know there's like a big damage portion, right? So like, for example, I use this talent on Mott for like the Obsidian Skin phase. You know, everyone in the raid's taking damage at that point, so this is really good because I could just throw it on, just help my healers out a little bit, and just kind of help keep everyone alive. So, cool talent. And then Windrush Totem. This is my personal favorite. It's basically, you know, it's just targeted. You place it anywhere on the ground. For the next 15 seconds, anyone that walks through it will gain 60% increased movement speed. And it works for everyone in the raid. And you can walk through it more than once. So if you're around the area, you can continue to refresh your buff on Windrush Totem as much as you'd like. This affects the entire raid / party. It's almost like a second Stampeding Roar, so I think this is great utility. And yeah, so that's about all I have to say about it. On the 90 tier, we have Surge of Power, Primal Elementalist, and Ice Fury. Ice Fury is really good for like heavy mobility fights, and also, you know, whenever you're playing the Master of the Elements build, this synergizes really well with funneling Frost Shocks in between Lava Burst casts. But the difference in damage between Primal Elementalist and Ice Fury isn't too large, even when played perfectly. Oh, what the heck? This guy's just attacking me. Okay. Let's kill him. It's odd that he's just here. Okay. He's just killing me. Well, that's odd. I'm just gonna kill this guy. Maybe. Okay, he's dead. This freaking guy just coming in and interrupting my video like that, man. Okay, well anyway. So what I was saying is the damage difference between these two, it's not that big. Even in like pure single target, it's, you know, not even when played perfectly, you're not going to get a huge damage difference between these two. Surge of Power is a really interesting talent. I like how it works. It's just unfortunately not too good. I played this talent for Mythic Orgozoa. I think it's really good for like funnel damage. So like say you have a single target you need to burst a lot and then a lot of ads around it. This is really good for applying multiple flame shocks at once and not having to spend, you know, multiple globals on it. I think it's really cool. It's just usually not that useful. So on the 100 tier, we have Unlimited Power, Stormkeeper, and Ascendance. I think Ascendance needs to be made baseline. I think that they needed to change this for years, but obviously, you know, Blizzard does what Blizzard does. So Ascendance is a cool spell. You turn into an Ascendant, and, you know, your Chain Lightning is just replaced with Lava Beam. Your Lava Burst has no cooldown, so you can just cast it forever while Ascendance is active. Cool spell. Just not, you know, I just don't think it's warranted as a talent choice. I think this should be a baseline cooldown. But that's my opinion. Unlimited Power, some people have been playing recently. Anytime your spell's Elemental Overload, you get 2% haste for 10 seconds. And you can continue to stack this as many times as your spell's overload. So it's kind of cool. I think that it can have some usages. I just personally don't think it's better than Stormkeeper, which is the talent that I play. But there are cases to be made for it. So Stormkeeper, it's 1 minute cooldown. Anytime you cast it, it makes your next 2 lightning bolts or chain lightnings instant cast, and they will automatically elemental overload. So if you use it on a single target, it's a guaranteed overload, and if you use it in AoE, it's also a guaranteed overload on every target. Usually this spell is better used in AoE situations, so like if it's off of cooldown, you're fighting a boss but you know a bunch of ads are about to spawn in like the next 5-10 seconds, then I would save Stormkeeper for that moment. It's still not going to be that bad to cast in single target, obviously. So moving on to Azerite Traits, we have Natural Harmony. This trait is going to give you crit anytime you deal fire damage, Mastery when you deal frost, and haste when you deal nature. Currently, it's not really worth it to maintain the Mastery buff. Like I said, Mastery is not a super important stat, so you don't have to worry about weaving in Frost Shocks just to maintain this buff. Obviously, if you're on the move, you have nothing else to cast, you already refreshed your Flame Shock, go ahead and just cast Frost Shock. It's at least better than casting nothing. But you don't have to actively game to try to maintain this buff at all times, is the point I'm trying to make. So, and then for the other trait that you want to get 3 times, which unfortunately I don't, is Heart of Darkness. This is a new trait introduced with the Nyalotha instance. Your secondary stats are increased by an amount while your corruption level is 25 or higher. This is extremely, extremely good, especially for any spec that stacks corruption that increases stats from all sources. This trait is going to be extremely valuable. My chest piece, unfortunately, does not have a Heart of Darkness on it. I'm still working on getting it, but right now I'm just running Synapse Shock, just a little extra intellect during, anytime I have Lightning Bolt. Ancestral Resonance is pretty decent as well. Tectonic Thunder can have some usages in AoE, but generally, most of the time you want to stack 3 Natural Harmony and 3 Heart of Darkness for the build that I'm covering in this video anyway. For corruption effects, you want equal ranks of Strike Through and Severe. So anytime you have Strike Through, increase your damage from critical strikes, and then Severe, increasing your critical strike from all sources. This is going to be the best combo, and ideally you want to have equal amounts of these at equal ranks. So like 4 Severe, rank 3, and 4 Strike Through, rank 3, or something like that to that effect. For trinkets, I have the Humming Black Dragon scale from the first boss. This is a cool trinket. Has pretty high uptime, just gives you some haste when it procs, and mine happens to have a socket, so there are other choices you could take, but this one for me is just kind of nice, and it's good in single target and AoE, because haste is always good. So and then we have the Psyche Shredder. This is going to be your best single target option, and most of the time it's even like okay in dungeons. So whenever it procs on an enemy, it will deal some shadow damage to them, and then all spells that you deal while they have the debuff on them will do additional damage, so it's nice in that way. There's a couple other options you could play. The Balefire Branch is interesting because it gives you a lot of intellect when you use it, so you can use this like in combination with your Storm Melee and do big burst damage. The problem with this trinket is the intellect decays over time, or when you take damage. So if you use this trinket and then you get hit really hard, you automatically lose, most of the value of the trinket. So use it to your own discretion. I do think that the Gladiator's Badge is a little bit better than this one, as obviously the general intellect that you gain from the other trinket isn't as high, but it doesn't change during combat, right? You just use it and you just have that buff. So use that to your own discretion. If you happen to have a Gladiator's Badge, great, works really well, great synergy with your cooldowns. Another really good trinket is the Manifesto of Madness. So this trinket, obviously, you want to use the first chapter when you're away from your allies, and then the second chapter you want to kind of stack up with your team to gain maximum benefit from both. The critical strike is super good, especially like during your Storm Melee. If you're playing, like big burst damage, you can use this during it, and it'll give you extra crit, which is really nice. So those are kind of how trinkets are, in my opinion. There's a couple other options, but those are generally, the go-tos. So for Azerite Essences, there's a couple builds you can play. For single target purposes, using this build, Vision of Perfection is going to be your best go-to single target essence. And this essence isn't even really that bad in AoE, honestly. So basically, Storm Melee is the spell that Vision of Perfection will proc for us. Notably, though, what's cool about this version of Vision of Perfection is if you don't currently have a Storm Elemental and you get a Vision proc, it will automatically reset the cooldown on your Eye of the Storm ability, which is obtained from taking Primal Elementalist in that sense. So it's really, really nice to get that refresh, basically. So I'll just show you. When I cast Storm Elemental, he's got these different icons. This one, Eye of the Storm, is a channeled ability that he does, and it does a lot of damage. And anytime you get a Vision of Perfection proc, the cooldown of this spell is instantly reset. So this is really, really cool. So that's kind of why Vision is so strong in that sense. You can even play this in dungeons too. I tend to a lot of the time. It's really nice. So you could play Azerite Beam for like some meme AoE damage, you know. You just kind of hit it and it's like boom, big ol' Kamehameha. But it's not going to be better than Blood of the Enemy as a major in AoE if the pool is decent enough size, right? So like on 3 targets, it kind of feels weird pressing your cooldowns on 3 targets. It does happen occasionally, especially in like higher keys. You know, in my opinion, I think the best way to gain overall damage is to use your cooldowns as close to on cooldown as you can. Obviously, if you have like a giant pull in the next 2 seconds, don't use your cooldowns, right? You want to make sure you have it. But don't try to just save your cooldowns for the boss later on or like a pull coming up or whatever, because you might potentially miss 2, 3, 4, 5 casts of your cooldowns throughout a dungeon, and that's a lot of extra damage that you can get from just pressing your cooldowns. So in my opinion, use them as much as you can. Blood of the Enemy is really strong in AoE situations in conjunction with Storm Elemental, Earthquake, and Eye of the Storm. So this done, if you're, especially if like you're in a coordinated group and you know the pulls and you know that your tank is gonna pull, you know, beefy packs, 5 to 10 mobs, maybe even more, Blood of the Enemy is gonna gain a ton of value, and I mean a ton. You can burst so insane with this thing. I've seen Elemental Shamans burst close to 1,000,000 DPS just from playing this essence in conjunction with the other spells. So it's kind of up to your own discretion. Basically, this is the build that I play most of the time. Sometimes I'll swap like Blood of the Enemy out for Conflict and Strife if I feel like I need some extra versatility. But most of the time, this is kind of what you go with this build anyway. There's a case to be made with Condensed Life Force and World Vein Resonance, especially when you're playing the Master of the Elements build, and other people in your raid have this essence. But for me, Vision's just kind of, I just love how this works, and proccing your Storm Elemental feels so good sometimes. So that's how I run with it. As for the rotation, the general basis is you want to maintain your Flame Shock, you want to cast your Lava Burst on cooldown while not inside of Storm Elemental, and fill with Lightning Bolt, basically. Spending your Maelstrom on Earth Shock or Earthquake if there's ever more than 1 target. So an opener, which looks something like 5 seconds before the pull, I'm going to cast my Stormkeeper, drop my Totem Mastery. I will then pre-pot and start with a pre-cast Lava Burst. As your Lava Burst is traveling to your target, you want to apply your Flame Shock so you get the guaranteed crit from Lava Burst, and then you activate your Storm Elemental. From then on, if you can get your maximum amount of stacks inside of your Storm Elemental window, ignore Lava Surge procs. If you can get your stacks to 20 and get actual usage out of the fast Lightning Bolt cast, don't even cast Lava Burst. It's not worth it inside of Storm Elemental. If you're not going to get maximum stacks, if the target's going to die in the next few seconds, or you're moving to another pull, or say you might have some downtime coming up, the boss might phase or something, then go for it. Use your Lava Burst charge, your Lava Surge proc, whatever the case may be. So, but yeah, other than that, it's pretty simple. You dump Maelstrom on Earth Shock and single target, Earthquake in AoE, and basically at 3 or more targets, you just replace Lightning Bolt with Chain Lightning as a filler. Pretty simple. So we'll go ahead and do a pull timer here, and I will show you kind of what an opening sequence looks like, at least how I play it. So we got about 10 seconds left. We're getting ready, we're getting situated. At about 5 seconds here, we're going to Stormkeeper, Totem Mastery, pre-pot, Lava Burst into Flame Shock, Storm Elemental. We're going to spend one of our Stormkeeper charges and get our Eye of the Storm rolling. Once you see that he has the Call Lightning buff, then you want to use your Eye of the Storm ability. And from here on out, we are just spamming Lightning Bolt, spending our Maelstrom on Earth Shock, maintaining Flame Shock, and like I said, I'm ignoring the Lava Surge procs, because you can see our Lightning Bolt is pretty much instant cast at this point, and we just want to get as much of these Lightning Bolts off inside the window as possible. Sometimes you'll get lucky and you'll get a Vision proc like in your opener, and then in that case you'll have like way more uptime on your Storm Elemental and you get just more cast of Lightning Bolt. So then, like I said, the only difference really from AoE is instead of casting Lightning Bolt, you're just going to cast Chain Lightning, and instead of casting Earth Shock to dump Maelstrom, you just dump it on Earthquake instead. So, Earthquake normally is a targeted ability. I have a macro that makes it so I cast it at my mouse, at my cursor, so instead of having to cast it twice, I just put my cursor at where I want the Earthquake to be, and I cast it, and it will immediately appear there. So there's a couple different macros you can have if you'd like, but this is just kind of that macro for Earthquake if you're ever curious as to why it's just, you know, why you don't see the reticle or anything like that. So as for stats, Critical Strike is pretty much always going to be good. Your character might be different than mine. You might have different stat priorities than mine, so I'd always recommend simming your own character on raid bots. But for me, Critical Strike is really good. Most Shamans, especially playing this build, you're going to want a lot of Critical Strikes. So Crit's good, Haste is good, Versatility is good. The only stat you kind of want to generally avoid is Mastery, just because, like I said, it's not really that strong. It's not strong. It's not like it's not good. It's just not better than the other 3 stats we have available to us. So as for gems and enchants, you know, I usually use Critical Strike gems. I have a Verse gem on this piece, which I need to replace, but I have Critical Strike on both my rings. I am playing Deadly Navigation on my weapon. I think that there's a case to be made for Torrent of Elements and Machinist Brilliance here. I just myself don't have as much baseline crit, which is why I'm using Deadly Navigation to kind of help give me that boost, especially like in big crit windows where I want that extra crit. This will help kind of give me a little bump in that sense. So, yeah. My wish list for Shadowlands is, I feel like they're taking LE in a good direction. The change that they made to Fulmination versus Seismic Thunder, how now it just all applies into one resource, is great. It felt odd casting Chain Lightning and not being able to spend it on like Earth Shock, so like if you're trying to funnel damage, you just couldn't. However, with the change to it, it pretty much just functions like Maelstrom, which, you know, it's just a different name, and I'm cool with it. I think the Maelstrom system is cool, but obviously we'll have to see how it pans out when that comes. I think that the changes that they're making to it are great. There's some cool talents. Having Elemental Blast kind of return to rotation again will be awesome. So I'm excited to see how that goes. And other than that, that's pretty much it. This has been Palpatine, my Elemental Shaman Guide. I hope you guys enjoy my channel, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.